Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes.
Thank you so much for coming. It's been a busy day. I wanted to prepare something for this evening, but I didn't get any time. But that's okay. I thought in the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita, which is a book of questions and answers, we can have some questions and answers this evening. So please gather your thoughts and see what may be going through your heart, your mind, any questions you'd like to ask on the Bhagavad Gita or anything we've been discussing in these days. And then we'll hopefully find some inspiration along the way. Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha After the sages asked many questions to Sutta Goswami, who's reciting the Bhagavatam, then the verse appears, Munayo sadhuprishto ham bhavad bir loka mangalam yakrita krishna samprashno yenatma suprasidati. It says, your questions are glorious, because these questions, they have the power to do two things. Yatkrita Krishna Samprasno Loka Mangalam. They create auspiciousness in the world, and ultimately these questions and the corresponding answers from Shastra, they fulfill the heart, and they allow the heart to become a fertile place where love for Krishna can grow. So the process of asking questions, receiving answers, and then genuinely, sincerely, seriously taking them into the heart and making the heart a fertile ground means that one's spiritual progress is assured. And therefore all the scriptures are in the form of questions and answers often. And the Bhagavad Gita is no different. It's said in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked Krishna 17 questions. Practically every 40 or 50 verses. For every 40 verses that Krishna speaks, Arjuna asks a question. Many, many questions. And you can say that there are three broad categories of questions that Arjuna asks Krishna. One type of question he asks Krishna is, he says, your point is not understandable to me. I don't understand what you're saying. So for example, Krishna will tell Arjuna, or Arjuna will tell Krishna, on one hand you're telling me to be in the world and perform my duty and fight on the battlefield and engage in the karma of this world, and at the same time you're telling me to be aloof, to be free from sinful reaction, to transcend the modes of nature. How do these two things go together? I don't understand. Another type of question that Krishna will ask, Arjuna will ask Krishna is, it's understandable to me what you're saying, but it's not believable to me. So say for example at the beginning of the 4th chapter, Krishna will say, Imam Vivashvade Yogam, I instructed this science to the sun god Vivashvan. And Arjuna is saying, I perfectly understand what you're saying, but it makes no sense to me because like you're in front of me, and like Vivashvan was from millions of years ago. So he's a little bit older than you. How in the world was it that you spoke the Bhagavad Gita to him? And then Krishna says the famous verse, both me and you have had many, many lives before, but I remember all of them, but you don't. So some of the questions of Arjuna are, I understand what you're saying, but it's not believable. And some of the questions of Arjuna are, I understand what you're saying, Krishna, it's believable to me, but I don't see how it's practically possible. And therefore, when in the 6th chapter, for example, when Krishna is telling Arjuna the absolute necessity of controlling the mind, then Arjun will say, Janchalam himana Krishna pramati balavadridam tashyaham nigraham manye vayuriva sudushkalam. I understand and I believe you, but vayuriva sudushkaram, I don't think so it's practical. It seems that to control the mind is more difficult than to control the wind. And then what does Krishna say? Asamsayam mahabaho mano durni kraham chalam. Asamsayam, undoubtedly you must control the mind. And it is practical, it is achievable. Abhyasena dugonteya vairagena chagriyate, by practice and by detachment. So like this, Arjuna asked varieties of questions. Some about understanding, some about logic, some about practice. And in this way, if you really want someone to do something, then you have to be able to give them the why they should do it. You have to inspire them. 2, you have to give them the practicality of how to do it. And then number 3, you have to give them the encouragement that they can do it. So if you want anyone to do anything, and they're not doing it, it's probably because one of these things or more of these things are missing. But when you answer all of these questions, then definitely someone will be able to take it up. So in any spiritual discussion, when we're asking questions, is to fill in the gaps. Because we look at our life and we see there's a gap between where I am and or where I would like to be and what I'm practicing. And the gap exists because either the why is not strong enough, or either the how is not clear enough, or the confidence, the encouragement within one's heart is lacking. The sense that I can do this is something I will be able to achieve, that's lacking. And so when we ask a question, it's an opportunity to fill that gap. And by filling that gap, we can move forward in the journey like that. So on that note, would anyone like to ask and begin with any questions? I gave you a little bit of time there. Yes, everyone go.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Sorry.
That's so offensive. It's just funny in India, like, like they get really like, because, naturally, like, I'm on the way and then someone will say, oh, excuse me, Prabhu, and then everyone stands up like, oh, no, Prabhu, and I'm like, it's not bad. I mean, Prabhu is also very respectful, so that's okay. No, we're relaxed here. No.
Yes, it was nice.
I'm not even a Prabhu.
Yesterday you showed a lot of pictures of self-help books. It was not the Gita talk, but the other talk. For me, The Power of Now was a very important book for myself. From my youth, I read all kinds of spiritual books, also the Bhagavad Gita as it is. I ordered that when I was 18 years old. But when I was reading The Power of Now, it clicked, not in my mind, but the observer was seeing, yes, this mind, I also have this talking in the mind, and I always identified with the voice in my head. So that was in 2003, and from then on I was practicing to see it as the observer. That helped me a lot to not identify with all these troubling thoughts.
So are self-help books bad?
What?
Are self-help books bad? Is that your question? Yeah, it wasn't for you.
For me it was very good. But also in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, also a lot of things about the mind.
The mind are there, yeah.
So maybe you can...
Yeah, I think someone also mentioned to me yesterday that I use self-help books, and is that a bad thing? And what I appreciate when I see all of these books is they've been able to break things down for people in a very digestible way. For example, we may tell people to come to Mangalarti, but then someone in the world writes a book called the 5 a.m. Club. And what they basically do is they give all the scientific study of why the morning is so important, how you should adjust your lifestyle, what you should do when you get up, and what you may want to do when you get, and empower people to actually inculcate that habit. And I thought maybe that's really nice, that we often tell people the why in Krishna consciousness, but maybe we don't unpack the how and the what digestibly enough for people to actually do things. So I think we can learn something from everyone. We can always take something from everywhere. What to speak, I mean, for example, Rupa Goswami writes the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and to explain certain concepts of how Krishna exchanges love and sentiments of rasa with his most confidential associates, Rupa Goswami basically takes Natya Shastra, which is basically like dramatology from the material world. It's just like, it's the theory of aesthetics, of how, when you're doing a drama, how to invoke emotions within the crowd. And he uses that framework and then uses it in a transcendental way. And so I think definitely we can learn something from everywhere. And yes, the power of now is so important. And Krishna talks about the power of now in the Bhagavad Gita, because Krishna says, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na sochati na kankshati samasarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labate param. Krishna says, when one is transcendentally situated, na sochati, they have no lamentation about the past, na kankshati, they have no hankering for the future. They're completely sama sarveshu bhuteshu, they're in the moment, they're conscious, they're aware. That's the real power of now. So it's all there, and but the reason we take to the Bhagavad Gita is because, number one, the Bhagavad Gita and spirituality gives us the deepest existential transformation, which allows us to experience those things. And then they also give the biggest vision of these things. For example, more important for us than the power of now is the power of the eternal present. Right? It's nice to be the power of now, to be present in your life and to be in the moment. But what about if we could be in the eternal present at every moment? And what does being in the eternal present mean? Being in Krishna consciousness. And so, yes, it's good if you can control your mind to be very present in the activity that you're doing, but it's an even higher level of vision if you're able to be situated in a reality that has no past and present, but which is just eternally existing. That's Krishna consciousness. So there you go. So you can write a book, The Power of the Eternal Present. Maybe it will become a bestseller. I often thought of writing a book which takes all the self-help books and then just upgrades the vision. So like Power of Now to the Power of Eternal Present. The Secret to the secret behind the secret. Like this. To upgrade the vision through Krishna consciousness. So, yeah. So, okay. Yeah.
Two questions, Maharaj. A softer one and a little more harder one.
Okay, we can always rely on you for that.
You mentioned when enter, I think, the University of Jagannath Puri, we have to cry for Krishna. But you push that to the point of it's not just crying like this, there's so much crying in the world that's not crying for Krishna. Our cry is to be cry from the heart. And I have, over the years, like devotees cry. We see them crying. And which will connect to my second point, in my cynical growth, cynical development, thinking, you're not crying for Krishna. You're crying because this went wrong or something upsetting. But even sometimes in actually directly spiritual context, devotees would cry, and I thought it's very beautiful. But then later I kind of thought, no, it's not necessarily crying for Krishna. It's an emotional moment. But is it for Krishna? So you said then, what it should be to cry from the heart. Would you like to give what that might manifest as? Like, is it necessarily still an emotional state, crying from the heart? Or would you give a more pragmatic demonstration of how, a pragmatic example of a devotee who's actually crying for Krishna, what will manifest like this, and this, as opposed to just, I don't feel much emotions, but yet can I cry for Krishna in a pragmatic way?
Yeah, very nice. It would be nice to hear your reflection on that in a second. But someone once said, what is the difference between running away from something and walking away from something? And they said, when you're running away from something, your consciousness is all in the thing you're running away from, you're moving away from. But when you're walking away from something, your consciousness is fixed on where you're going. That, in other words, your movement is driven by where you're going. The next amazing thing that you're leaving this situation to enter into. But when you're running away, it's just like wherever I can go, but just not here. And that's the difference between running away and walking away. And I think that's also the difference between the cries of the samsarika or even the cries of the sadhaka and the cries of the siddha. Because the cry of the siddha is a cry to be with Krishna, a cry of desperation to experience, to enter into Krishna's world, to enter into Krishna's pastimes, to enter into Krishna's life, to want to be a part of Krishna's life again. And I think that when that inspiration is what pervades the heart, it's almost like George Harrison sings, I really want to see you, I really want to see you. You know, that kind of sense of real longing. Because one's heart and mind has become so captured by the beauty and a real earnestness and lobha and greed arises to want to know about that place and to want to experience and serve in that place. I think then it becomes the cry of the soul, because the soul's desire is a soul of service, eternal service. That's the very nature of the soul. So when so sometimes we even say like the devotee doesn't desire to go back to Godhead. And that's true, but then we'll find that the Vaishnavacharyas sing all these songs in which they have this like longing to go back to the spiritual world and serve in a specific role, because it's become so much a fascination in their mind and heart. And so I think that's probably where the demarcation lies between the emotional cries of someone who's been hit by the school of hard knocks and is approaching Krishna, and someone who has taken that but now become enchanted by the beauty of what they hear in Harikatha and Krishna's world and now wants to be there. I don't know if you have a reflection on that.
As you answered, come to mind, I guess Prabhupada's approach is always a very practical approach. So I was thinking, crying for Krishna, you could at least equate with a Vyartakalatvam, just not a second do I not engage every moment in some chance of service. that's a crime.
Yeah, that's a practical. Okay, so when you say pragmatic, you're saying like a practical demonstration of what it means to cry for Krishna. Yeah, that desperationlessness, that earnestness, and also that fearlessness, that willingness to make a sacrifice, that willingness to do whatever it takes. When one is actually crying for Krishna, then they're willing to do whatever it takes, and so. Yeah.
And there's one expression I saw recently on my trip that it connects to this, but something you said earlier also, is that pain is weakness leaving the body.
Mm.
So, and it's a gym expression about, but I thought for devotees, our body's so full, especially our spirit was full of weaknesses, the weakness of the heart, and usually they're not going to go without some pain. And so that willingness to do whatever is required.
Yeah.
Painful or not, I don't care, because I want Krishna. And so that cry for Krishna will mean, okay, here's something I don't like, this is not nice, but I'm still going to, whatever it is, embrace it or do it or want it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
But my other question, Maharaj, was a little more, maybe not a conscious but embarrassing question. When you did that Niti Shastri verse,
Oh yeah.
I already spoke to few words on this, and that long list of 10 things that you shouldn't do. All 10, I'm going, yeah. And therefore, I'm obviously going to be a bit defensive now, because I do all those things. And obviously, it's so much nicer just to be encouraging. But my makeup resists that. So that's maybe you now preach to me and tell me, Shamlana, you're a nonsense Maya, and therefore I need to improve upon it. But in one discussion I had too, everything in Krishna consciousness is never the same as in the material world. For example, like, was Prabhupada proud? No, but was he strong and bold? Yes, he was. So pride doesn't know what, humility more. So humility is not so...
One dimension. Yeah.
So encouraging, and I always think it was in Tibo where we were having a discussion, in a certain context, could even a criticism be an encouragement? If the conscience is correct, the relationship is there, and the goal is actually achieved. Somebody, because like the half empty, half full glass, I always I'm the half empty guy, because I get excited to see that there's so much to do. So, but then it's not very encouraging. It's kind of like, why do you always see the wrong? Why do I always see that's not there? So it can be definitely shifted. But I like that point. Could a criticism in the right context be an encouraging thing? Or is that
just on that point, I think definitely. I mean, we need that. We need that feedback. We need that honest exposure. As long as we're the right person, we give it at the right time, we give it using the right words, and we give it with the right motivation, then what we do is we give that person the best chance of actually receiving it and benefiting from it. So it can be, but it needs to be administered appropriately. Otherwise, what we can do is we can be right, and but we can ultimately not serve the purpose of why we're actually giving that. So I think it just requires that sensitivity of delivery. And I think on this verse, what I took away from it was not so much, what was just this idea, what I saw in that verse in myself is this tendency within us to just be really cynical. To just take something and immediately cynically look at, well, this is actually the real story, and just look beyond the immediate beauty of something and rather defer to what could be behind it that, our cynical mind says is the reality. And I think that cynicism comes from just living in a world where we've kind of maybe been let down, or we've seen so many things that haven't, not everything that we see meets the eye, and then what happens is we tend to feel like to survive in this world we have to be really smart and really streetwise, and we shouldn't just take things on face value, and we should be more mature and more, and that's all necessary to live in the world, but then at the danger of becoming cynical. And if Vrindavan is a playground, the playground of God, then the qualification to enter a playground is you have to be a child. And the qualification of a child is that they're totally non-cynical, they're very innocent, they're very, they're just very straightforward, and very pure in their innocence as well. So I think we kind of, I just kind of decided to share that verse just to help us maybe think, help myself think about how, over time in this world of seeing so many things, we can immediately just end up with a very cynical mentality, which is, perhaps quite antithetical to the innocence and the purity with which we want to try to practice Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Thank you. Maybe we'll go here and then we'll just go.
Thank you, Maharaj. So I had a longer question with a lot of context. Because this morning I was given a tour, and the people were very much interested in like the soul and karma and everything, and they were very enthusiastic and very challenging as well. But there was this one lady, and she said, I'm suffering so much in my life, what's the point of God? And before that, we had already this discussion about karma and everything. So I told her that what we see right now is just like one little chapter of the big picture, and there's probably, so much to understand that we can't. So all that we can do right now is react accordingly and appropriately. And that was a satisfying answer to her, but it wasn't really satisfying to me, so I spoke to some seniors. I felt like I could do better, and also it took me such a long time to answer that question because I was going everywhere and it really threw me off. But then Mother Bhagavati, she gave me the analogy of the prison, we're not meant to enjoy here and everything, but I felt like that was just maybe like a little too harsh for this group, and I often come to this situation where I feel like that this analogy is a little too harsh for the people, because most people that they're Dutch people, so they're very can be very harsh and cynical sometimes. So I was wondering whether there is like a more straighter, shorter, and a better, nicer way to explain all of this. But as well as is it wrong for me to avoid that prison analogy?
There's a whole philosophy, there's a whole field of study about this one question, and it's called theodicy. I mean, there's no sure answer to this question. This question, because it's so emotionally loaded, there's no one answer. It's really in that moment you have to try to immediately understand how much emotions are still hanging over this person, how much their heart is open, how much trust they have in you. Otherwise, the most logical answer still won't penetrate the heart. So it really is case to case. People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. So you really have to connect with people, and you really then have to see how open they are. It's hard. Sometimes there's no point actually giving an answer immediately. Sometimes you just have to be with people and just share with their pain. Just say, I know it's difficult. Let's look forward. What can we do? Sometimes with people, what I do is I don't even talk about the past and try to help them untangle the past, but I just say, let's focus on the future. What can we do? How can we move forward? And they come out of that conversation feeling much more empowered because we talked about something they can do. Whereas in that conversation, if you try to untangle the past when they're not ready to, then they come out of the conversation feeling more confused and disempowered because they just don't know. So the main concept is, when we're preaching, someone should come away from the conversation more inspired, more uplifted, and more open. That is the measure. And how to get there depends in every situation. I tell you a really, it's kind of a heavy story, but just to depict this. Once I was driving and one of the devotees called me and he said, are you in this area? I said, yes. He said, can you go to this house? The daughter of the house has just passed away. So I said, okay, I'll go. So then I rerouted, I started driving to that place. I turned up to the place. Just before I was about to go in, the devotee, he called me again and he said, let me just speak to you before you go in so you know the context. I said, yeah, tell me. So he said, the daughter's passed away, but let me tell you the background. He said, she passed away 2 days ago. It was the 30th of March or whatever it was. And he said, what happened on the 30th of March the previous year is that her sister was murdered. So on the previous year, one of the daughters was murdered. 1 year later, on the anniversary of her sister's passing away, the other sister went to the top of a car park and she jumped. So he said, now you're going in. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, so what do you say? So my mind's just racing. Like, okay, like, what do I say? What words do I have? So I'm walking up to the door, almost like, and I kind of go to knock the door, and as I knock the door opens, like even before I knock it. And the mother is at the door. And she looks at me with tears in her eyes. And there's no hello, nothing. She just looks at me and she says, why has God done this to me? And in that moment, it's like, what do you say to someone? Sometimes I even think of our philosophy, and I'm just like, I don't have the heart to say this at this. It's just not relevant. And so in that moment, for 1 hour, we just sat with her and we just heard her and let her just vent all of her emotions and share what was going on in her heart. And sometimes that's just what you have to do with people. So it's not like, we have to just leave people from a conversation feeling more empowered and inspired. That there's something here that can help me to move forward in my life. And sometimes it's philosophy, and sometimes it's empathy, and sometimes it's just talking more about the future. Is that okay? Yes.
Hare Krishna. My question will be very simple. I'm troubled now by artificial intelligence. Could you speak some words about the screens and Krishna consciousness, please?
Screens?
So, yeah.
Yeah, or just technology in general?
Technology, screens, everything.
Okay. Yeah, so artificial intelligence. I think with artificial intelligence, in the world today, they now understand that IQ is not enough, that along with IQ, people need EQ, they need to manage their emotions. And then later on, social scientists said along with EQ, we also need SQ. People need purpose, meaning, they need hope for the future, they need faith in something beyond themselves. And therefore, our understanding is that IQ can be used within the context of EQ, And along with EQ, we need an overarching SQ. So what is artificial intelligence doing? Is just basically increasing our IQ beyond our own innate potential. So whatever, intelligence we all have been given by, our karma, what we're doing by artificial intelligence is we're just benefiting from the intelligence of everyone else, and we're kind of centralizing that into a technology system which then processes it in such a way that any of us can then benefit and almost take our IQ capacity beyond what it is. But ultimately, what does all of that technology do? Technology without humanity, technology without spirituality, it doesn't leave people happier. This young child, she wrote a very beautiful poem called The Paradox of the Modern Age. She said, we have taller buildings but shorter tempers. We have wider highways but narrower minds. We've conquered outer space, but we're struggling with inner space. We have more degrees but less sense. We have more conveniences but less time. We lose our health to get wealth, and then we spend that wealth to try and get our health back. We buy more, we enjoy it less. We've multiplied our possessions, but we've reduced our values. And so technological advancement without being couched within humanity and spirituality is dangerous. And therefore, even those who are developing AI, like last year, Elon Musk and the others who are like the pioneers, the co-guy with Steve Jobs, what's his name, the Apple co-founder?
Steve Wozniak?
Wozniak, yeah, that's it. They wrote an open letter saying we need to slow down. We need to slow down with ChatGPT, with AI, with all this technology, because without a proper ethical and value system around this, is actually has the threat of becoming more dangerous in the world we're living in. So, yeah, as devotees, we also have to be careful, because technology is also not neutral. Technology also creates a mentality within us. We always kind of have this notion of yukta vairagya. So definitely, hari sambandha vastuna, whenever we see any vastu, anything in the world, we're looking for the hari sambandha. How can we connect it to Krishna? Yuktam vairagyam uchyate, this is yukta vairagya. But even in doing yukta vairagya, you have to understand that when you're dealing with technology, because it's a different energy, it also has an effect on the consciousness. Like, it's different reading the Bhagavatam, and reading the Bhagavatam from a Kindle or a laptop. It's different. There's definitely a change in the approach that we have. So, yeah, what to do? I asked ChatGPT once, can you be my guru? And even ChatGPT replied, I can give you information, but a guru should be a living, enlightened spiritual person. So then I said to ChatGPT, thank you for being so humble. ChatGPT said, no problem. And then I said to ChatGPT, Hare Krishna. And ChatGPT said, Hare Krishna. ChatGPT to say Hare Krishna. That's interesting. So yes, it's a AI. That's the world we live in. So I was just in Delhi. So I met with one AI person. So, he was like really enthusiastic. He said, I can make you like 500,000 followers on Instagram. And he said, all I need you to do is make some reels in Hindi. Speak in Hindi. I said, but I don't speak Hindi. He said, don't worry, just give me 5 of your lectures, and then I'll create your voice, and then you'll be speaking Hindi. So within 2 days, he kind of messaged me back, and I was giving lectures in Hindi. That's amazing. And And then he was telling me that in the future you won't read books. People won't read books. What you'll do is the author will teach the book to you. Because what they'll do is they'll basically AI the voice of the author, they'll AI the avatar of the author, you'll put a set on, and that author will basically teach the book to you. And at any point while you're reading, if you want to stop the author and ask them a question, you can ask them a question. I'm just telling you, this is going to happen. It's all coming. The world is changing at an exponential rate. I mean, it's just like phenomenal. Like what you know. So anyway, I don't know how it's all going to work. Hopefully we won't be around to see.
I asked this question also to my wife recently, because we see a lot of, she is a teacher, and a lot of students use ChatGPT for making any kind of summarizes like that. But isn't that using a program like ChatGPT, AI, we become dull-headed actually?
Yeah, definitely.
So we don't use our brains actually to do the work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's definitely that danger is there, you know. I mean, educationalists have said it can go two ways. It can go either that way, or the exposure to all this information and the need for people to still be useful. You see, because if AI replaces, there's no need for humans anymore. So humans have to up their game to provide something more, to be useful. And so educationalists say there's both aspects are there to it. Jai Shri Radha Gopinath Ki. But yeah, definitely we become so like. I think there's a certain generation which just stopped being able to do maths in their head, you know, because there was a certain time in the world when calculators and other things and phones came about. So now it's like that generation just can't do mathematics in their head because they just never needed to do it. They just relied. So yeah, an artificial world, what to do? But we have prema culture. So we go back to the roots. And that's very balancing. Thank you.
Today, before lunch, I talked to a very prominent senior here, and talking about what we said now about the AI and this world was going fast and we cannot stop. He said to me that we needed to go back to what Prabhupada said, which means agricultural living with cow and a lot of cow and a lot of cow. When we have a lot of cow, then we have the blessing of the cow work because it does something magical inside us and it will put us in another way. But he said, in Radhadesh we're not ready, nobody wants to do this. And I, in the sense of going all the way for it. He said, we do in progress, but it's not, and I said, but we have urgency in the world, so what do we do? And what do we do? Are we ready to have our food with the boom making, the earth and planting, and we cannot do it? And I was thinking, I'm not sure I'm ready to do that, but I want to go this way. So how do we, in the Krishna consciousness, which I know little about, as you know, how do you merge this AI, which we can do nothing, and all the craziness in the world is going to be stronger, we can do nothing, and at the same time this culture of Prabhupada who said we have to do it this way, but what it is in the between, and how we go there, and what's the step, and are we really ready, and how we transit to this, how do we deal with this? Having a lot of cow, I say it's great, but you have to have young people to work, you have to have house, you have to have so much, so how we do it?
So this was going to be an easy evening. And
I'm sorry, Marge. Just need your help to see, understand all of this. So
we were just with Tibor in the garden today, and we were talking about that, and you know what's happening there. We were speaking to Robert yesterday, who's in the Goshala. And I think that we have the beginnings of this. What we were talking about today is it would be so wonderful if, you know, the whole community, all of us who come, could just spend some time in the week, just being with the earth, being in that environment. I think when we all just become inspired about being in nature, connecting with that energy, just feeling how beautiful that is, Prabhupada often told us, isn't it? Simple living, high thinking. So just living in that harmony, I think that's like, you know, forgive the pun, but planting the seed, you know, within everyone. You know, the real thing is that because of our urban lives, because of our urban upbringing, you know, we're just so disconnected from that world. And therefore, even though we know it's such an important thing, just the thought, you know, of someone who's been like a city slicker their whole life, even if they become a devotee, even the thought of just living on a farm is like living on a farm, like that's what you do all day, you know. It's because we've become so disconnected from that. So I think the beginnings are like we have these beautiful projects, these initiatives, you know, there's a great vision of how to actually expand it in a sustainable, systematic way. But I think the real thing is for all of us to just experience the joy of being in nature, the joy of living that simple life, the joy of connecting with the cows, the joy of planting something and seeing it, you know, manifest and offering that to Krishna. And as we can become more inspired by that natural life, like Srila Prabhupada, he wanted devotees to come to India, to come to Vrindavan, to kind of see that simple village life, to connect with that, because that's so much intertwined with the natural consciousness of spirituality. It's the favorable environment for that spiritual consciousness to grow. So I think again it's relearning that, reawakening that. It's all amnesia. We've forgotten it because we've been so exposed to another type of environment. So yeah, it's that's why projects like this here are so important. And yeah, but I don't know. Maybe someone who's in this area would like to say more about this. Why don't you share some ideas with us? And Robert's here, he's working with the cows. This is your chance.
Yeah, Krishna Maharaj. Well, you said we just had a nice talk in the garden, and we were just, I was just asking Maharaj, now we have already 1, 2, 3 projects ongoing in the garden, and what can be your recommendation, what can I do now? And then Maharaj was suggesting me also to open a bit more the project to the community, to everybody, and to try to organize like sometimes a day in the garden, and or like some activities to connect more with the people in the garden. I'm talking about garden, but it's the same with the Goshala, I guess, because we also recently tried to create this self-sufficient team in Radhadesh by just merging the garden and the Goshala department together. So maybe, it would be nice to organize, I mean, in the coming days, and to have a routine to organize organize something when the devotees can come in the garden and connect a bit more with the project that we're doing and try all together to build up these self-sufficient communities, and yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Thank you. Saying something, Rob?
Yeah. Hare Krishna. I think one of the things is that it's just general lack of manpower, because one tractor has replaced men of many men. The one tractor can do so much work, but if we want to do it with oxen and then it requires more work. And as Maharaj already mentioned, that many of us come from urban environments, so we don't have a natural inclination towards working outside with cows or nature. So yes, this idea to have a community gatherings once in a while is really good, so that we see how we can plant our own food and how we can work with oxen. Radhadesh has a great potential for, because we have a lot of land, we have oxen who can work. It just needs manpower, more hands on work.
Yeah, in London it will cost you £150 to hug a cow. Yeah, it's a therapy. It's like a big thing in the world now. They understand that just by being around a cow, your stress levels reduce. And so it's a big thing in the world now. Go to a farm, hug a cow. But so here it's like, my God, they're all ready, ready to hug you. Very nice. Yes?
Thank you, Maharaj. So I just wanted to continue your point to say it's maybe not in our nature, and something came to me, and I was hoping you could speak to that if we really think about our true nature is gopas and gopis, and I know that's a bit gopi bhav, but I read this in a self-help book where they were saying that Michelangelo, the David, he didn't create David, he took away what was not of David. So I sometimes try to see that in all of us. I say, okay, whatever we see that's negative, it doesn't actually belong to the soul, it doesn't belong to our true nature. So maybe our disconnection with nature doesn't belong to us, and it's something we need to remove and to reconnect with that. The soul who is connected with nature, who is connected with Krishna. This is something I actually experienced when there was a horse that lived in Radhadesh, and a lot of devotees took care of her, but as I was kind of part of helping her to pass away, and suddenly came to me and I saw her and I said, this is not her. I said, what are you doing in this body? It's not working anymore. Like, you don't belong here anymore. And it really was a revelation to me, and I try to see devotees that way as well, that all the things that we don't like,
just superfluous to us,
that they don't actually belong to them. It's something from material nature. So I don't know.
Yeah, one French philosopher talks about this, I forgot the name, he calls it destructive enlightenment. He says enlightenment is not when there's nothing left to add, it's when there's nothing left to take away. And the enlightenment is not the addition of something superfluous to someone, but it's the removal of everything that's artificial to who they truly are. And which kind of totally resonates with us, because according to the Bhagavat philosophy, our material existence is perpetuated by two things, anarthas and upadhis. Anarthas means unnatural qualities, unnatural desires, unnatural attachments, and upadhis means artificial identities, designations, false conceptions of who we are. And so the whole process of bhakti yoga is to remove anarthas. Anartho pashamam shakshad bhakti yoga madoksaje, to remove anarthas and to remove upadhis. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam. So the whole process is, once you've removed all your upadhis and anarthas, you actually you are who you are. So all these things are so unnatural, and the forest life is the life. This is the spiritual world, and the forest is the most enchanting place for the pastimes of love to happen. and therefore to reconnect with that nature is so much a part of our journey. So yeah, today we're also talking about Vrajamandal Parikrama, and just the experience, if you can do it once in your life, of just walking around Sri Vrindavan Dham, Vrajamandal for 1 month on the ground, village to village, just connecting with that nature, connecting with that culture, connecting with that environment, and that it's very, very powerful. So these create deep impressions in the heart. So it's so nice. If we would live in harmony with nature, if we would, yeah. Like if there were no electricity, then people would go to bed on time. And they would wake up at the right time. But when there's electricity, then you go to bed at the wrong time, you wake up at the wrong time, you get sick, you have to do this. It becomes all artificial. So somehow to reconnect with nature, very beautiful. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a question regarding your first lecture on Bhagavad Gita, in which you presented the seminal, the cyclic succession, as well as spiritual cyclic succession. And as far as I know, you may correct me on that, the list that's on the first pages of Bhagavad Gita was compiled by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And basically, it's a shiksha line, and it basically Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur picked out devotees who, according to him, presented the pure conception of bhakti, and there are quite significant gaps in between the positions, so to say. And as far as I know, also before the appearance of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it is considered to be some kind of a dark age for us Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So my question to you is, how is it possible that somehow bhakti and influence can diminish for some time, and how is it possible that it can appear again?
So there's a disciplic line, and in that disciplic line the pure teachings of bhakti are being passed down, but we see that there are times when that bhakti diminishes, it diminishes in prominence, and then it reappears. So how is it possible that it can diminish? And
how is it possible that it can appear?
Yeah. So His Holiness Gaur Govinda Maharaj once made a statement. He said the earth could not spin unless there's a pure devotee living on it, which is a very beautiful poetic statement, because the whole purpose of the material creation is to escape the material world, to reconnect with the eternal world. But unless there's a pure devotee, someone who carries bhakti, the pure conception of bhakti, how is that opportunity to connect with that reality available? So we can understand that even at times when it may diminish, there's always carriers of pure bhakti. Pure devotees are always present on the earth. He was always also making this point that there are always pure devotees. So how is it possible that at certain times things can diminish? That's the effects of Kali Yuga. Even when Krishna leaves, Krishna already predicts it. Krishne svadhamopagate dharma jnana dibishaha. When Krishna goes to his own swadham, then what leaves with him? Dharma and jnana. So it's the nature of the world that when great personalities leave, then for some time there may be a dip. There may be somewhat of an influence of other things coming in. That's the nature of the material world. But there's always access. There's never extinguishing of devotion. There may be sometimes a diminishing or a covering to some extent, but it's always available, and it's always hidden within the heart of, dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam. It's always there, hiding in the hearts of the sincere devotees. And then at a certain point, it catches fire and it revitalizes in the world. So it's all moving according to Krishna's plan and according to the desires of the living entity. Why does it diminish? We can just say it's the effects of Kali Yuga, and it's the nature of the world that we're living in. Because the material world is created to facilitate the desires of the living entity, and where there is a desire for forgetfulness, then Krishna Surya Sama Hoya Maya Andhakar, then the son of Krishna has to somewhat be covered for that Maya to appear. So like that. Krishna will appear now. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath ki jai, Radhadesh Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Shri Shri Gaura Nitai ki jai. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.